All right, there's my audience.
There you go. So, my presentation is over the history of Nintendo consoles. So, first there was the NES. It was the kind of the kickstart of after the video game crash in the United States. And so when they made it in the US, they drastically changed it from what they had in Japan. The Famicom, it gave us many classics and, started many franchises like Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Donkey Kong. The SNES was a continuation on that. It had better graphics. Instead of 8-bit, it was 16-bit. It was still only 2 controllers though. 2 people could play. I'm blanking so much. Because gaming was more familiar in the West again, they didn't change it much like they had with the NES. They just kept it similar to the Super Famicom. Then we had the Game Boy. The Game Boy was pretty revolutionary, I might say that a lot. It was one of the best handhelds, one of the first handhelds, and it was able to link with other Game Boys. They made many different Game Boys, Game Boy Light, Game Boy Pocket, played all sorts of games. And it introduced franchises like Pokemon and Tetris, Tetris being the best sold game until Minecraft a couple years ago. Then we had the N64. The N64 was Nintendo's first 3D console. 3D, it changed gaming. Like, there were so many more possibilities, so many more levels, so much more space to go. And 4 players could play on this console, like doubling what they had of the last consoles. And then we had the Game Boy Advance and the GameCube. They're kind of similar, but I put them on the same slide because they're in the same generation. They were both like refinements of the past consoles that they made. The Game Boy Advance, it was a lot better than the Game Boy, and the GameCube, it was a lot better than the N64, but nothing really defining of the era other than the GameCube now having discs instead of cartridges. And then the Wii, this one was actually named the Nintendo Revolution during its making, and it was a console completely focused around motion controls, and that's what this controller is. They, instead of having a traditional video game controller, you would hold it in one hand and wave it around. And it's also one of the best-selling consoles ever, like one of the top 5. And it was also, it had the entirety of the GameCube inside of the Wii, so it had the last console and then added the motion controls. And then the DS and 3DS. The DS, until a couple months ago, was the best-selling console ever, and it was a rethinking of, the Game Boy. It had 2 screens. 2 screens allowed for twice as much info on the screen, or having supplementary info on the bottom screen, or maybe even the top screen. It also had a touch screen, so instead of just doing buttons, you could draw or press things or whatever. The 3DS was like the DS, but it also introduced 3D, and in a very novel way. Instead of like having the red and blue glasses like at the movie theater, or like other stuff, it used lenticular technology, so it was 2 different, like those postcards or whatever, you turn and you see two different images. That's what the screen was doing in the 3DS. And then the Switch, the newest one, or second newest one, there's now a sequel to the Switch 2. It was a console, it was a home console and a handheld console at the same time. So you can play franchises that were made for both of those on this thing right here. And then you can take the controllers off. The controllers are very versatile. You can use both of them together. You can use one flipping sideways. These also have motion controls like the Wii, but they can be used as regular controllers too. And that's about it. Thank you for watching.